Top of the morning to you, laddies. What is up, you big, beautiful bastards? How's it going, bros? My name is Pew. Good mythical morning. I don't really have an intro. I'm really searching for something that feels on brand, if you know what I mean. All right, all that nonsense aside, let's talk about Pokemon cards again. This is another video in an ongoing series that I've got about post-rotation cards. In particular, like what we're losing, what we're gaining in specific categories of cards. This will, I think, be the 5th video. You can see some of the others in the eye in one of these. I'll put a link. But we did Pokemon search, we did damage, we did healing, we did a few different things. But this next one is one of the more, I think, critical changes that's going to take place post-rotation, and that is all about post-rotation gusting. So, what do I mean by gusting? Let's just define that real quick. Basically, gusting is the ability to make your opponent switch out one of their benched Pokemon with their active Pokemon. Now that can be of your choice, that could be of your opponent's choice. Sometimes it involves you changing out your Pokemon. Doesn't matter, the point is that they have to change their active Pokemon. That's gusting. Let's start by looking at what we are losing. And I think this is a critical component to this, because we are losing an incredibly valuable card in Guzma. That's the first card we're going to start with. That's the big boy. That, I think, is going to have a massive impact on how everybody plays the game moving forward. Nobody was safe on the bench when you were playing with this card in the game. So we're losing Guzma. Guzma allowed you to throw down as supporter for the turn, switch one of your opponent's bench with your active. You got to choose as the player who played the card. And then you would switch one of your cards from the bench to the active as well. We did lose a few other cards, less impactful, I think, but you know, I think the breadth of gusting options is definitely narrowing because of this. So we did lose Escape Rope, which was kind of like a Guzma, except your opponent got to choose which Pokemon they switched. Okay, fine, a little less valuable, but still got something out of the active. We lost 2 other cards. We lost Pokemon Catcher, which you know, allowed you to switch your opponent's active Pokemon with one of his or her bench Pokemon. Kind of like a Guzma, except you didn't change your Pokemon as well. An item card, so you could play it alongside a supporter. And then we also lost Counter Catcher, which is if you had more prize cards remaining, you could switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active Pokemon. So Guzma, Escape Rope, Pokemon Catcher, Counter Catcher, all gone. So yeah, that's what we lost. Massive, massive change to the game. Now the question is, okay, well, what do we still have and what are we getting? So let's start with what we have left in our arsenal, so to speak. And I'm gonna divide this up into a few different categories like I've done the whole time. This first category are going to be Pokemon that can do this same effect as their attack. So this isn't a passive ability. This is like you have to take a whole turn just to swap it out. Obviously, the downside with this is if it's an attack, that ends your turn. Your opponent can then move that Pokemon that you just gusted right off their active, which is highly likely. It may cost them some resources like a supporter. It might cost them energy. It might cost them an escape board. It might cost them item cards like a switch. So it definitely is something that it could be annoying and it could burn through some of those items or other cards that they have in their deck that they might be saving, so it's inconvenient. And in a best case scenario, they just don't have those. So I think if you were to play something like a reset stamp, which is coming out, which basically is the Marshadow post-rotation as an item. If you were to play something like that and then do one of these actions, yeah, your opponent might be left, you know, up a creek, so to speak. The first one I'm gonna focus on is Alolan Vulpix. And the reason I picked this is because it doesn't cost you an energy. It's a totally free attack. It's Roar. Opponent switches their active Pokemon with one of their bench. The opponent gets to choose. So less than ideal, but if it's if they don't have a lot of Pokemon and you know what they're going to switch it into, great. If you just need them to get their active off of that location, because maybe that active is going to take you down in the coming turns, just makes it inconvenient for them. The next card is Roserade. So the interesting thing about Roserade is you get to choose which Pokemon is being switched with the attack, and it leaves the active Pokemon poisoned, which, sure, like if they leave that active slot, the poison goes away, but it does a tiny bit of damage on top of moving them out of that position. Obvious downside to this is it is an evolving Pokemon, so it takes a little bit of time to set up. If you really want to run a 1-1 or a 2-2 line of, 2-2-2, whatever the line is, of Pokemon needed to get to this Roserade just for that effect, maybe not. But it is an option with an interesting twist, I think. The next one that we're going to talk about is Floette. So it has Swirling Petals for 1 Fairy Energy, and basically it allows you to switch the active with the bench. You get to choose as the player. And if you do, you switch that Pokemon with one of your benched Pokemon. So it's an attack that acts like a Guzma, which I think is interesting because it gets that 70 HP Floette out of that active spot. So you can rotate in something that you want to KO, and then take something that could easily be KO'd out of harm's way, so to speak. That could be an interesting little aspect, especially if you're running fairy decks. The next one I'm going to talk about is Zoroark. This Zoroark is from the, I believe, Team Up set. And it basically, allows you to switch, the benched with the active. No additional effects. The only reason I'm putting this in there is because I think dark type Pokemon are going to see a lot of play post-rotation with the Weavile, with the Tyranitar GX tag team. Now, these next two are also interesting because one of them is a basic Pokemon, and the other one I think plays nicely into the new potential meta around sleep. So let's start with the basic. We have Oricario, I believe is how you pronounce it. I don't know. Some of these new Pokemon. Anyways, it's a fire type. Check. That's good. It allows you to switch the Pokemon. They're active with one of their benched Pokemon. Cool. And it leaves the active Pokemon burned. So, like the Roserade, it has an additional effect, but unlike the Roserade, it isn't an evolving Pokemon. And then I think the last one for Pokemon with attacks is I think it's Ariados, and I think this one is from Celestial Storm. It is an evolving Pokemon, downside. But it has, for 1 grass energy, 1 leaf energy, I don't know. It has a attack that allows you to switch one of the Pokemon from your opponent. It's active and benched, right? As we know, you get to choose. And it leaves that Pokemon asleep and poisoned. Now, asleep, that's the one that we're really interested in because you get a Stadium card in the new set of Unified Minds that makes opponents flip 2 coins instead of 1 to wake their Pokemon up. Now let's move on to the second category of Pokemon. And these are Pokemon whose ability, just a passive ability, allows you to have your opponent switch those Pokemon out. So the first of which I'm going to start off with is Hypno. This is the Hypno from Unbroken Bonds. It is a stage 1, which is not as ideal compared to a couple of these other options, but the nice thing about it is when your opponent's active Pokemon is knocked out, you flip a coin. If it is heads, then you choose which of your opponent's bench Pokemon now takes the active position. So it synergizes very well, especially with maybe some Mew and Mewtwo GX builds. The next card I'm going to talk about is Suicune from Lost Thunder. This one has an ability that once during your turn, if this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, you may have your opponent switch their active Pokemon with one of their benched. Now, important thing to note here, your opponent gets to choose. And Suicune has to be the active. Benefit, it has one retreat. So throw a U-turn board onto that Pokemon, and then you can put it in the active, retreat it away, make your opponent switch something at one point, and then you can attack. So I think as an ability, it could be really powerful. The next one we're going to talk about is Volcanion Prism Star. Now this one, it already has Sauna Blast. So if you're playing a water type deck already, you're probably going to be running one of these in your deck because of that attack. Benefit here is that its ability is also great for this. So once during your turn, you can discard an energy card, a water energy from your hand. And if you do, then the opponent switches their active with one of their benched. Again, your opponent gets to choose. Not amazing, but it definitely is the option to like make it difficult for your opponent. And the last card that I think everybody is already thinking about and talking about is Ninetales from Team Up. This one's ability is that during your turn, you can discard 2 fire energy cards from your hand, and if you do, you can switch your opponent's active and bench Pokemon. You get to choose. This has nice synergy with things like Fire Crystal. So if you can get that that Ninetales onto your bench early in the game, Fiery Flint, you got some extra energies, discard a couple of them, Fire Crystal, get them right back into your hand, doesn't matter. And you've switched out a couple of those Pokemon, power up your Reshiram and Charizard with a Welder. It just has so much synergy. So I definitely think you'll see some Ninetales play. So that is the set of Pokemon that allow you to switch those Pokemon from your opponent's side of the field. Some are better than others, some are active in terms of attacks, some are very passive in terms of ability, which I think we're all gonna prefer. But now the next category is trainer cards, right? Well, we lost Guzma, we lost Escape Ropes, we lost Pokemon Catcher, we lost Counter Catcher, but there's gotta be other things out there. Maybe it's lots of supporters. So there's not a lot of item cards, or who knows, right? Well, the things that we are keeping, I can count on one finger. One card, Custom Catcher. And in fact, it's not really one card. You have to play 2 of them. Because the way that Custom Catcher works, if you play 2 cards from your hand on the same turn, then you can pick which Pokemon you want your opponent to put into the active. It's limiting because you can only do it twice per game. You're definitely going to see a 4 off of these index until something better comes along. Not in this set, but in maybe one that comes out in December. But yeah, you'll definitely need them in your decks, but that's what we have. And so in terms of how you can protect yourself from some of these things, some of these effects, I think that Stealthy Hood becomes even more valuable after the rotation, because with Guzma, basically nothing could protect you from a Guzma, right? Like something's on your bench, you Guzma, nothing can save you from that. But with many of these Pokemon, they are abilities that are being used. You throw a Stealthy Hood on your active, or maybe one of the benched Pokemon that you don't want to be gusted up, and all of a sudden, these abilities that Suicune and Volcanion and Ninetales that they have, they don't affect that Pokemon anymore. So I think you could probably start seeing 2-3 Stealthy Hoods getting played in decks that are very Tag Team GX heavy in order to protect those prizes. So that's what we have still available to us. And then in terms of what we're getting, nothing. We're getting nothing in Unified Minds.
You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
That is basically it for Gusting. Hopefully this video was helpful to anyone out there building decks that they are looking for something to replace those Guzmas or those Counter Catchers. Let me know if you think I missed anything critical. Yeah, and definitely leave those comments down below. And yeah, if you like this video, feel free to subscribe You know, you can check out the other videos in the playlist as well. I think I'll try to actually do proper end carding somewhere around here for some of those things. And yeah, you can also find me on Twitch, same URL, same name, I should say, Gyroshan. On Instagram as well, I do pack openings and I'll play the game. I'm really excited for the new set, Unified Minds. But yeah, that is it for me today. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you on the flippity fly. I don't have an outro either.